All right, get ready for this one. We are diving deep into a 2024 Indian Supreme Court judgment.
Yeah, this one's a doozy.
A real political thriller, actually. It involves a massive skill development fund scandal in Andhra Pradesh.
Oh, yeah. This case has it all.
Accusations of shell companies, evidence tampering, you name it.
And right at the center of it all.
Nara Chandrababu Naidu, the former chief minister.
Hundreds of crores of rupees are at stake in this case.
And this court decision, well, let me tell you, it has huge implications for future anti-corruption efforts, so buckle up.
Absolutely. What's really fascinating about this case is how a project that started out as a skill development program
Seemed pretty straightforward at first, right?
Right. It morphed into this incredibly intricate financial web,
We'll be taking you through excerpts from the Supreme Court judgment itself.
tracing the journey from these ambitious beginnings to these serious accusations of high-level corruption.
So let's set the scene. Back in 2015, Andhra Pradesh launched this ambitious skill development program,
It was big. 6 clusters were planned.
each with a budget of over 546 crore rupees.
Wow.
The initial plan was for private companies to fund 90% of this project,
Siemens and Design Tech.
with the government contributing the remaining 10%.
Sounds like a good plan.
But as we'll see, this reliance on private partners might have opened the door for what came next.
Right. That funding structure is definitely key.
Definitely.
The idea was to use that private sector expertise, but it also seems to have introduced a level of complexity. A level of complexity that might have masked some irregularities.
So then, fast forward to a GST intelligence investigation in Pune.
This was seemingly unrelated, focused on some CNVAT credit claims by Design Tech.
And a company called Skiller Enterprises.
Right. Suddenly, the Andhra Pradesh Skill Development Project popped up on their radar.
It's like a domino effect, one investigation leading to another.
Totally.
So what did the investigators find?
Well, it turns out Design Tech had subcontracted a significant portion of their work to Skiller.
Even though their agreement specifically did not allow for subcontracting.
Exactly.
Now, Skiller initially claimed they were developing software.
And that they were receiving royalties for it.
Makes sense, right? But get this, when they were questioned by tax authorities, they changed their story.
They then said it was just training material. And the royalties were just a mistake.
Yeah, a mistake. Okay.
That's a pretty significant discrepancy, wouldn't you say?
Big red flag.
It raises a lot of questions about what was really happening with those financial transactions.
For sure.
And the investigation, it goes even deeper. They found out that Skiller didn't even develop the software they were supposedly getting paid for.
Oh, wow.
It was actually purchased from shell companies, potentially for just a fraction of what they billed Design Tech.
A classic tactic to divert funds.
Classic.
And this is where our main character, Nara Chandrababu Naidu, enters the picture. Years after this initial investigation started, he's added to the case.
Interesting.
He's accused of being the mastermind behind the whole thing, appointing key figures without even getting cabinet approval, approving massive budget increases. Essentially, he's accused of fast-tracking the whole project and causing a huge loss to the state. 370 crore rupees.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder why Naidu was brought in years later.
Right.
What specific evidence linked him to this intricate scheme?
Well, his lawyers didn't just sit back. They launched a legal challenge, arguing that the whole case should be thrown out.
On what grounds?
Section 17A of the Prevention of Corruption Act. This section, by the way, was introduced in 2018. It requires prior approval from the appointing authority before they can even investigate certain offenses by public servants.
It's like a safeguard against frivolous investigations or politically motivated ones.
Exactly.
So how does that apply to Naidu?
Naidu's team argued that Section 17A should apply in this case because the real investigation...
Not just the initial inquiries.
Right. They argued it didn't truly start until 2021, well after that law was enacted.
Oh, wow.
They claimed that a 2018 memo from the Anti-Corruption Bureau, which the state was using as evidence of an earlier inquiry, wasn't really a formal inquiry at all.
Just a request for information.
Exactly. They're basically saying the timing of the investigation
Not the timing of the actual offense.
is what really matters.
Interesting. So the Supreme Court had to decide.
Big decision.
Was that 2018 memo really the start of a formal investigation? Or was it just a preliminary step?
Because their interpretation would decide whether or not Section 17A even applied.
And that would ultimately determine the fate of those charges against Naidu.
Right. And the court actually sided with Naidu on that point.
Really?
They agreed that the 2018 memo wasn't a formal inquiry and that Section 17A did apply.
So case closed.
Not so fast. They didn't let Naidu off the hook completely. They allowed the prosecution to continue, but with the remaining charges under the Indian Penal Code.
So a partial victory for Naidu. It brings up a pretty important question.
What's that?
Does the court's decision create a loophole? Could officials be shielded from these corruption charges simply by delaying investigations?
That's a very good point.
Could this be a dangerous precedent?
It's definitely a fine line they're walking. So Naidu can't be charged under the Prevention of Corruption Act, at least not yet, because of the lack of that prior approval.
Right.
But he still faces charges under the Indian Penal Code. And remember, the state can still seek that approval and potentially revive those corruption charges later.
So it's not over yet. The court's focus on the timing of the investigation rather than the offense itself is fascinating.
It is.
I mean, could this lead to a situation where corrupt officials, knowing about potential legal changes, delay investigations?
To benefit from those changes? It's like a legal chess game.
Totally. And that's just the beginning. This case, it's full of twists and turns. We still need to unpack what this judgment means for Naidu, for the state, and for the future of anti-corruption efforts across India.
Lots to discuss.
Lots to discuss. This Supreme Court decision to uphold Section 17A.
Even though the alleged offenses happened before it was enacted.
Yeah, it's raising some eyebrows.
It really makes you think,
is this a win for procedural fairness? Or is this actually a setback in the fight against corruption?
that's the core of what we need to unpack here.
Right. The reasoning behind this decision could have some major consequences.
It really could.
Because remember, Section 17A, that was put in place to protect public servants from these random investigations.
Safeguard, basically.
Exactly, like a check on the potential for abuse of power.
Makes sense.
And the court, in this judgment, they emphasized that point.
That it's about when the investigation started.
Not when the offenses happened, right.
Yeah, but the investigation started after Section 17A came into effect.
Even though the offenses were before.
It's a big shift in perspective.
It is, and it raises some really tough questions.
Like what?
Well, could this lead to a situation where corrupt officials, knowing the law might change, delay things?
Delay investigations to make sure they fall under a different legal framework.
Exactly.
Wow.
Could this create a sense of impunity? You know, make these officials bolder?
I see what you mean.
It's tough because you want to make sure things are fair.
Of course, you don't want people being investigated for no reason.
Exactly. But at the same time, you don't want to create these loopholes that can be exploited.
To protect the guilty.
Right. So where do you draw the line?
Tough question.
And the implications, they go way beyond just this case, right? Think about the fight against corruption in India as a whole.
Yeah, what does this mean for that?
Will this embolden officials? Make them think they can act without consequence?
It's a balancing act for sure.
It is. And the court, in their decision, chose to focus on these procedural safeguards.
But that doesn't mean it's over for Naidu, right?
No, the court didn't completely dismiss the case.
Okay, so what happens now?
Well, they were clear. No charges under the Prevention of Corruption Act.
Not right now, anyway.
Right, because there wasn't that prior approval.
Well,
But the other charges, the ones out of the Indian Penal Code, those are still there.
so he's not off the hook entirely.
Not at all. It's like they're saying, we get it, there was a procedural issue.
But that doesn't mean we're ignoring potential wrongdoing.
Exactly. They left that door open for more investigation.
Through a different legal path.
It's interesting, isn't it? The Prevention of Corruption Act is specifically for corruption.
Right.
But the Indian Penal Code, that's broader, covers lots of different offenses.
So they've created two tracks.
Yeah, like they blocked one path but left another one open.
It's a reminder of how complex legal systems can be.
Totally. And that's where the political side of this whole thing comes in.
Right. Naidu is a big figure in Andhra Pradesh politics.
He leads the opposition party.
And this case, well, everyone's talking about it.
It's a political drama playing out in the legal arena.
With huge stakes.
Not just for Naidu, but for the government, too.
And the people of Andhra Pradesh.
Think about what could happen.
Like what?
If Naidu is acquitted, that could be seen as a big loss for the current government.
Hurt their image.
Absolutely. Could even fuel these accusations that it was all political.
But if he's found guilty...
that could end his political career.
And damage his whole party.
It's a high-stakes game for sure.
With the people of Andhra Pradesh caught in the crossfire.
It's them who ultimately lose the most.
Yeah, all this has really eroded trust.
It's made people cynical about politics.
And raised questions about how public funds are being used.
Because let's not forget, These funds were meant for skill development.
Programs that could help a lot of people.
Exactly. It shows how corruption isn't just this abstract concept.
It has real-world effects.
It hurts communities.
And it hinders progress.
Beyond just the money, there's this loss of faith in the system.
In the rule of law.
It makes you think, this whole case highlights how important transparency is.
And accountability in government.
Absolutely.
So this judgment, it seems like a win for procedural fairness.
But it's opened up all these questions.
About what it means in the long run.
The real test is how it's used in future cases, right?
Will it protect people from unfair prosecution?
Or will it become a tool for those who want to avoid being held accountable?
That's the question.
A question that lawyers, policymakers, and the public will be debating for a long time.
But we can't forget about the people at the heart of this.
The ones whose lives have been affected by this.
Their stories are what truly matter. We've spent a lot of time talking about the legal side of this case and the political maneuvering.
It's a tangled web for sure.
But what about the man at the center of it all? Nara Chandrababu Naidu.
Yeah, he's a fascinating figure.
This isn't just some random politician.
He's been a major force in Andhra Pradesh politics for decades.
He's a veteran leader, former chief minister.
Known for his focus on technology, economic development.
He even got the nickname CEO, chief minister.
Because of his business-like approach?
He really cultivated this image of efficiency, progress.
So these corruption accusations, they really clash with that.
It's a big difference.
Makes you think, how does someone with that kind of reputation
get caught up in a scandal like this?
That's the question, isn't it?
It says something about the nature of power.
How even seasoned leaders can find themselves in compromising situations.
And we can't forget about the political context here.
Right, Naidu's party.
The Telugu Desam party.
They're the main opposition party in the state right now.
And this case, well, it's being pursued by the ruling government.
There's definitely a political angle to all of this.
You can't ignore that.
Could be motivations, rivalries at play.
It's like a classic political game, but being played out in court. And in the court of public opinion,
each side wants to use this to their advantage.
The stakes are high.
For both Naidu and the current government.
Naidu's reputation is on the line.
But so is the credibility of the government.
Imagine if Naidu's acquitted.
Could be a big blow to the ruling party's image.
Lead to accusations of a witch hunt.
Potentially weaken their support.
But what if he's found guilty?
That could be the end of his political career.
And damage his party significantly.
It's a high-stakes game.
With the people of Andhra Pradesh caught in the middle.
They're the ones who really stand to lose the most.
This whole thing has eroded trust.
Fueled cynicism about the political system.
And raised concerns about misuse of public funds.
Because remember, these funds were meant for skill development.
Programs that could have really helped people.
It goes to show that corruption isn't some abstract idea.
It has a direct impact on people's lives.
It can devastate communities.
And hold back progress.
And beyond the financial cost, there's that loss of faith.
The disillusionment with institutions.
The ones that are supposed to serve the people.
It's a sobering thought.
It really emphasizes how important it is to hold our leaders accountable.
Demand transparency.
And make sure justice is served.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
The legal complexities, the political games, the consequences.
And at the heart of it all, the human impact.
The effect on people's lives, the erosion of trust, the questions about the integrity of our systems.
Those are the things that will linger.
This deep dive, it's been a journey.
A journey through a complex web of information.
We've uncovered layers of intrigue.
But more importantly, we've sparked a conversation.
About these critical issues.
Issues that need our attention.
We hope this has empowered you
to think critically,
ask those tough questions,
and engage in meaningful conversations.
Because the pursuit of knowledge doesn't end here.
Keep exploring, keep questioning,
and keep diving deep